naranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Girivardhari Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Stotra Sutta Shishi Malis Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Anantakoti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Shikaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shri Vasadi Shri Go Bhaktivedanta Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakund Radhakund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Mayapur Dham Ki Navadip Dham Ki Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Ganga Mai Ki Yamuna Mai Ki Tulsi Maharani Bhakti Devi Ki Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Shri Guru Granga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. So we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 8, Text number 8. Āsīd, yad-udarāt, padmaṁ, āsīd yad-udarāt padmaṁ loka-saṁsthāna-lakṣaṇam loka-saṁsthāna-lakṣaṇam yāvān ayaṁ vai puruṣa yāvān ayaṁ vai puruṣa iyattāvayavaiḥ pṛthak iyattāvayavaiḥ pṛthak tāvān asāv iti proktaḥ tāvān asāv iti proktaḥ saṁsthāvayavavān. I have to put slightly different glasses on, I'm afraid. saṁsthāvayavavān saṁsthāvayavavān iva āsīd yad-udarāt padmam loka-saṁsthāna-lakṣaṇam yāvān ayaṁ vai puruṣa iyattāvayavaiḥ pṛthak tāvān asāv iti proktaḥ saṁsthāvayavavān āsīd yad-udarāt padmam loka-saṁsthāna-lakṣaṇam yāvān ayaṁ vai puruṣa iyattāvayavaiḥ pṛthak tāvān asāv iti proktaḥ saṁsthāvayavavān āsīd yad-udarāt padmam loka-saṁsthāna-lakṣaṇam yāvān ayaṁ vai puruṣa iyattāvayavaiḥ pṛthak tāvān asāv iti proktaḥ saṁsthāvayavavān saṁsthāna-lakṣaṇam puruṣaḥ āsīd yad-udarāt padmam loka-saṁsthāna-lakṣaṇam yāvān ayaṁ vai puruṣa Ladies?
āsīt yad-udarāt padmaṁ, loka-saṁsthāna-lakṣaṇam, tāvān ayam puruṣaḥ, iyattā-vayavaiḥ pṛthak, tāvān asāv pṛthak,
Āsīt, as it grew. Yat-udarāt, from whose abdomen. Padmam, lotus flower. Loka, world. Saṁsthāna, situation. Lakṣaṇam, possessed of. Yāvān, as it were. Ayam, this. Vai, certainly. Puruṣaḥ, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Iyattā, measurement. Avayavaiḥ, by embodiments. Pṛthak, different. Tāvān, so. Asau, that. Iti proktaḥ, it is so said. Saṁsthā, situation. Avayavavān, embodiment. Iva, like. Translation. If the Supreme Personality of Godhead, from whose abdomen the lotus stem sprouted, is possessed of a gigantic body according to his own caliber and measurement, then what is the specific difference between the body of the Lord and those of common living entities? Purport. One should note how Maharaj Parikshit intelligently put questions before his spiritual master for scientific understanding of the transcendental body of the Lord. It has been described in many places before this that the Lord assumed a gigantic body like that of Karanadakshayi Vishnu, from whose hair pores innumerable universes have generated. The body of Garbhadakshayi Vishnu is described as sprouting the lotus stem within which all the planets of the universe remain. And at the top of the stem is the lotus flower on which Lord Brahma is born. In the creation of the material world, the Supreme Lord undoubtedly assumes a gigantic body, and living entities also get bodies, big or small, according to necessity. For example, an elephant gets a gigantic body according to its needs, and also an ant gets its body according to its needs. Similarly, if the personality of Godhead assumes a gigantic body to accommodate the universes or the planets of a particular universe, there is no difference in the principle of assuming or accepting a particular type of body in terms of necessity. A living being and the Lord cannot be distinguished simply by the difference in the magnitude of the body. So the answer depends on the specific significance of the body of the Lord as distinguished from the body of the common being. I'll read the translation again. If the Supreme Personality of Godhead, from whose abdomen the lotus stem sprouted, is possessed of a gigantic body, according to his own caliber and measurement, then what is the specific difference between the body of the Lord and those of the common living entities? Amagyanatamarandasya gananjana shalakaya chakshurumitam yena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam yena bhutale swayam rupa kadamayam dadati swapatantikam. So it's mentioned here, Prabhupada mentions how we should note how Maharaj Parikshit has posed intelligent questions before his spiritual master for scientific understanding of the transcendental body of the Lord. So this is a very important principle in spiritual life. When a person is approaching his spiritual master, he should take the time to understand, he should realize the importance of the association of the spiritual master, what the spiritual master can give, the potential that can be gained from association with the spiritual master. And so therefore, pose intelligent questions, not whimsical questions like, how many windows are there in the Empire State Building or some stupid thing like that. So one should understand the gravity of the situation. We've been in this material world for millions of, unlimited. We've been in the material world for unlimited time. We've always existed in this material world. And now we've got a chance to gain some understanding of what's really going on in the material world, how we can get out of our suffering condition, and we can find out who we really are in relationship to everyone else and the Supreme Lord. So it's a very grave situation. This opportunity has finally come, and here we are. This is actually an eternal situation. There will always be people seeking to get out of this material world and to gain spiritual realization. And Krishna will always be sending his representatives to help. So this class that's going on now and goes on every day is an eternal situation. It's always going on. This Krishna always provides this opportunity for us to gain knowledge and to make advancement in Krishna consciousness. So I thought it was quite interesting. There's one point here where Prabhupada says, there is no difference in the principle of assuming or accepting a particular type of body in terms of necessity. So the verse here is comparing the massive size of Karnadakshayi Vishnu, and how do you compare, as it says here, the Lord is possessed of a gigantic body according to his own caliber and measurement. Then what is the specific difference between the body of the Lord and those of the common living entities? So he's trying to find out, how can you compare the two? And then Prabhupada just says, well, there's no difference actually. In terms of necessity, there's no difference. The Lord assumes this huge body because he's generating all the universes and all the living entities. And so for that particular purpose, he needs a huge body. And then Prabhupada points out here that if we take birth as an elephant, then, or if we are destined to live as an elephant, then we are given an elephant body. So we understand actually that the bodies that we have we are generating our next body right now. Everyone, as they move through the material world, as they move through the earth, as they work, as they engage in different activities, they're forming a new body. And that body may be a new material body, it may be a new human body, or it may be a spiritual body. Or actually, and the difference is, of course, is that if you engage in pure spiritual life, then you get a completely different body, a body which is transcendental, a spiritual body. But as long as we are engaged in material activities and in material consciousness, then everything a person does in this life is like recording his new body. It's all the different parts and the appearance and whether it will be a male or a female, whether it will be born in a rich family or a poor family, how much intelligence there will be, how much beauty there will be, is all being recorded in like a 3D printer or something. It's like kind of, the program for a 3D printer is being generated. And then when we leave this body, a suitable body is prepared. And of course, that body is generated to give us a unique experience that we can use to learn lessons from the mistakes we've made in this life. So we're in this life, we're moving along, we tend to get caught up in what's immediately in front of us. We're very much engaged, we're very much absorbed in the situation that we find ourselves in, and we respond to it. As things happen to us, we respond to them, and oftentimes in an unconscious way. And desires are there, and sometimes situations come up where we have a choice. Are we going to do a good thing or a bad thing? So when you're a child, these choices come up. Should I smack this kid, or should I be nice to the kid? Do I want to exercise my power over this other child, or do I want to try and reciprocate nicely? So as we reciprocate, depending on our choices, whether we're going to be a bully or whether we're going to reciprocate in a nice, caring and friendly way, that's recorded. All of those interactions we have, all of these bad things we do, they're all recorded. And then in our next life, we're put into a situation where we will be able to reap the results. We will be able to experience all that bullying we did to the child. We will be bullied in our next life. A bully may seem to escape. It's interesting how sometimes we see politicians doing terrible things and they seem to get away with it, and everyone goes, this is terrible, they should be hung or whatever. But we know, actually, anyone who has any understanding realizes that no one escapes anything. And that if a politician squeezes people out of so many situations, out of money, out of their home, creates horrible situations for people, in their next life, they will be directly affected by that. So the purport is bringing us to it's giving us the understanding, or it's waking us up to this idea that we have so many bodies of potential, that we have the potential to be in so many different types of bodies. We have been, it's interesting that there are no new souls. We are all always existed. There are never will ever be, it's not that Krishna generates new souls. Whatever souls there are have always existed, always will exist. And we've been put into this situation, and we've had millions and millions of births in this material world. And now here we are in this one birth. And there's a tendency to become overwhelmed by the situations we find ourselves in, and action and reaction, sometimes automatically, the struggle for existence Prabhupada speaks of. And we forget that this is just one of millions of births. Who knows how many human births we've had in the past, learning lessons. We're actually all fortunate in that our previous human births have led us to be here in Sri Mayapur, in the association of devotees, in the holy Dham, where even sleeping is like paying obeisances. We're in such a fortunate position to be here. And so we should understand how we've been given this mercy. We need to remove ourselves, step back, and see the big picture of our situation. Don't necessarily be pushed by immediate concerns. There's such a phenomenon now where there's so much online information. You type in ISKCON or Hare Krishna and you come up with a plethora of different sites with all sorts of information, some of it really good and some of it really, really bad. And people will spend, half their life typing comments in that they supposed to be wise comments, which is basically just gossip, prajalpa. I remember hearing how back in the early days, when we only had telephones, the only means of communication was the telephone, landline telephone. And then someone invented something called the telex. And with the telex, you could send a message on a thin strip of paper. There would be your sentences, today is Ekadashi, or whatever it is, message you were sending would be on this little thin strip of paper. And so the devotees were enthusiastic. Wow, this is fantastic, we should use this. And Prabhupada said, no, you will just use it for prajalpa. So in those days, it was just a little strip of paper with a sentence or two, or whatever you could put on there. And Prabhupada knew back then that you will just use it for prajalpa. So What to speak of the internet now, where you can post memes and so many incredible things you can do with the internet, and get caught up into issues, this issue or that issue, and waste so much time thinking that we know so much and that we become the big acharya on some issue or another. Compare that to the lives of great sages and saints. Oh yeah, thank you. I was reminded of Tukaram. Many of you may know Tukaram was a great devotee, period about 1500, 1600. I think is it Maharashtra or Gujarat? Maharashtra. A Marathi saint. And he lived in a village with his family, his wife and children. And he was a great devotee. He composed all these, I think, abhangas, songs in glorification of the Lord. And he was completely absorbed in Krishna consciousness, just always thinking of Krishna, making up songs about Krishna, just constantly meditating on the Lord. But meanwhile, his wife and children were hungry. And his wife was getting on his case. You have to get some money. We have to feed the children. So you have to go and get a job. So if he would try to get a job in the village, it would be no good, because everyone would go, you can't work for us. We'll just give you some money. It's like, we'll give you whatever you need. But he would never accept anything, because he was thinking, well, I can't accept this. I can't just accept some charity like that. So he would never accept. So in order to get a job, he'd have to go to another village. So he would go to a village where he wasn't known. He walks into the village. He sees a farmer there. He asks the farmer, can you give me a job? The farmer looks at him. He thinks, oh, this looks like a very honest, simple man. I'll give him a job. You sit in this field. There's a little bamboo platform. You sit here and you scare the birds off and all the other animals and make sure nothing destroys the crops. And you can just stay here and that will be very good. So he's very pleased. Tukaram sits there on his platform and he's singing his bhajans and making up his abhangas. And he sees the birds coming and he's saying, oh, these birds, Lord Krishna's servants, and they're eating the grain. And then the other animals are coming and eating, and he's going, oh, and he's going, Krishna, Krishna. He's so happy and blissful. And time goes by and he's just watching the birds coming and he's just seeing this wonderful creation the Lord has made, and he's just so blissful and happy. And then after 2 months, the farmer comes and his crop's all destroyed. And he says, what is this? What have you done? I thought you were an honest man, and now I've lost everything. I can't imagine how much I've lost. This must be so much. It must be, you cost me at least 2,000 rupees. You have to pay me back this 2,000 rupees. And Tukaram starts to talk to him and said, well, the reason I came to you is for a job. I don't have 2,000 rupees. I need the money myself. What can I do? And he starts talking to him and backwards and forwards. And then the farmer starts questioning him. He says, why are you talking like Tukaram Baba? This is the way Tukaram Baba speaks. He's renounced like this. Why are you talking like this? Well, I am Tukaram. He says, Hi Baba, you're Tukaram? I've heard so much about you. Oh, my land is blessed. My next harvest will be a wonderful harvest. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So then he goes home to his wife with nothing. Again, he has nothing. And then somehow or another, somebody sends some sugarcane to his house. And his wife says, we have some sugarcane. Take it to the market. I'll give you a list of things. You can sell it and then buy these things we need and then come back. So Tukaram's okay. So he goes off to the market with his sugarcane. And as he's going through the village, all these children are coming and saying, oh, Tuka, give me some sugarcane. So he said, okay, I'll give you some sugarcane. And then Tuka, give me. So all these children are coming. He's giving the sugarcane out one after the other. He's giving the sugarcane. So finally he's got no sugarcane left, right? And so then he's like, oh, what am I going to do now? So then he goes home to his wife and he's like, oh, so you brought the things that, no. So what happened? Well, the children, they wanted the sugarcane. What could I do? I had to give them the sugar. He says, you have children here. You have children here. What are they supposed to do? What are they supposed to eat? You've given everything away and you give nothing for your children. What is this? So she was always, can you imagine, poor woman. Imagine being married to such a pure devotee. What could she do? She was such a chaste wife. He would go up on this hill every day, and he would just chant his bhajans on the hill. And so she would prepare his lunch, and she had this habit that she would prepare his lunch, she would take it to him, she would feed him, and then when he'd finished, then she'd sit down and eat. Or she'd come home and eat and feed the children. So he's up on the hill one day, and she goes out to find him, to feed him his lunch. And she steps on a thorn really badly, and it's hurting so much. And she's like crying in pain. She can't walk anymore. She's like, has to sit down on the ground, and she's like, what am I going to do? I have to feed my husband, and then when I feed my husband, I have to come home and feed the children, and now I'm completely stuck here. I'm trying to serve my husband faithfully, and now this is happening. Why is this happening? Why is this happening to me? It's so unfair. So Krishna in our heart is seeing this. So he appears as a shepherd, as a cowherd boy, and he comes and he takes the thorn out of her foot. So then she goes and she gives Tukaram his lunch, and as he's eating, he's wondering why she's late, and then she explains how she had this thorn and she didn't know what to do, and she was crying, and then this cowherd boy came along, and Tukaram realizes, oh my God, the Lord himself has come and taken the thorn out of her foot. What have I done? I'm engaging the Lord in my service and in my family's service. So that from that day on, he vows to go home, to stay home and have his lunch at home, so that he doesn't have to perplex the Lord. So, like that, he was acting in such a way, completely in Krishna consciousness. Completely absorbed in Krishna consciousness. He couldn't help it. Everything was just, he was Uttamadhikari. He saw everything as being the Lord. Everything as being Krishna's mercy. He couldn't distinguish. He didn't distinguish between what's proper action and what's improper. It was all, for him, it was all proper action. Because it was all, he was seeing everything in relationship to the Lord. So imagine if we tried to do that like that, right? In the modern age now, if we tried to act in such a way that, you know, we would be branded as being completely irresponsible, right? You should just, I remember when we were in Spain, we were living in New Vajramandala for a while, and I was really hoping I'd been here in Mayapur with Harikesh Swami, and he wanted to do Varnashram in Mayapur. He wanted to develop Varnashram, and then he left, and we had to finish up our work, and suddenly I didn't know what to do. So we thought, let's go to try and develop a Varnashram project. So we went to Spain. And the Spain New Vajramandala farm has as much land as Mayapur has, 600 acres of land, huge farm. And we agreed to, at that time they wanted to sell the farm. There was many devotees wanted to sell the farm, and the GBC wanted to save the farm. So Kadambakana Maharaj asked us to go and help, my wife and I, to go and help try and save the farm. So I agreed that on the condition that maybe I would, for 2 years, I would help them to do the management, and then when the management was kind of more or less running, then I wanted to try and develop a Varnashram project. So it was agreed, and we were given a small portion of the land where we could develop a Varnashram project. And it was a real struggle. It was really a struggle, and at a certain point, devotees were saying to me, you know, you have a wife, you have a child. Our son was 5 or 6 years old at the time. You know, you should just get a job. What is this nonsense, hanging out in the field and trying to grow your crops? It's obviously not working. It's never going to work. You should get a job. You should do, you know, be responsible. And I was thinking to myself, well, if I go and get a job, then that's it. Varnashram project finished. There's no way we're going to do it. How can you do that when you're working full time? So somehow or another, Krishna helped us. I remember Kadambakana Maharaj would come, and we'd be down to our last 100 euros, and he would come and give us some money to help us. And then one day, a devotee came to me with some boxes of clothes. And he said, is this any good for you? And we opened the boxes up, and there were all these clothes that were just the style that my wife liked. And it was just like this incredible mercy that Krishna was providing. Somehow or another, he was providing. And we've seen that throughout ISKCON, how in the early days, when the devotees first came, Many times they only had enough money to pay the rent for the week or the month, and then they didn't have any money. And, we hear stories of Shamasundar walking down the road in San Francisco, and suddenly a whole bunch of notes blowing in the wind down the road. He picks up all these dollars, and it happens to be just the right amount for the rent for that month. So like that, this is actually the devotees in the beginning of the movement were living like Tukaram, right? Of course, there weren't so many grihastas in those days. And, there was a bit of a controversy because there were so many brahmacharis and sannyasis, and everyone thought the grihastas are just in Maya. To become a grihasta is just Maya, So that was the thinking in those days. But even the grihastas, we see so many examples of grihastas. Prabhupada described how if a person is living as a grihasta, but is engaged fully in Krishna consciousness, in devotional service, then he is as good as a sannyasi. There's no difference. So this is how the movement began, with devotees just doing the needful. As it's described here in the purport, Prabhupada describes how we get a body according to necessity. So Prabhupada or Krishna gave us these bodies that we're in, and then Prabhupada was always saying, do the needful. That was the kind of the mantra that was I remember in the early days it was just flowing all the time. Do the needful. Just whatever needs to be done, that's what you do. Don't be attached to doing this thing or that thing, just do the needful. And so that's what devotees did. And so, they were living this life like Tukaram, just going out. I remember one time, the temple president called me into the office, and he said to me, one devotee has to appear in court in 2 hours' time. This is in London, in Marylebone Magistrates Court. But he's not here. He's up in Scotland distributing books. So we need you to go to the court, pretend to be him, plead guilty, and pay the fine. So I was like 17, 18 years old, something like that, brahmachari. He's like, okay, Prabhu, I'll go. So I took the money, I found the name of the devotee, I go to Marylebone police station, go into the office. And so this is in 77, 78, something like that. I walk in, and there's, the Hare Krishnas were very unusual and rare in London in those days. So I'm walking in, a pimply 17-year-old Hare Krishna walks into the police station, and I say, I'm wanted for this offense, I've come to, surrender. So the man looks in the book, he says, oh, I don't see your name there. He says, let me see. He's looking through that. I don't see your name. But anyway, he says, Sergeant, take him, put him in jail number 3, and and we'll figure out who he is. So I wasn't expecting that to happen, So I'm taken down to a jail, to a cell. Clink, clink, they open the door, they put me in the cell. Ka-chunk. There I'm sitting there. And it was around about 12:30, 1 o'clock lunchtime. So at a certain point, the man comes in, one of the guards comes in with a tin plate with some sausages and some chips and a cup of tea, and he plonks it down, he brings it into, and I said, I can't eat that, I'm a vegetarian. He says, oh, vegetarian are we? Not good enough for you, is it? Okay. So then he comes out, he takes the plate out and locks the door again. And after about 10 or 15 minutes, the door opens again, and he brings in these 2 slices of white bread that have got margarine on top of them, and then he's inscribed a Christian cross on each piece of bread. And he plonks that down, and he says, there you go, is that spiritual enough for you, is it? So I just look at it, and I was like, okay, put it down, So then he locks the door again, walks out. So I look at it, and I'm feeling hungry, but I'm thinking, I'm not going to eat that greasy-looking, greasy tin plate with this, just had sausages on it like 10 minutes before. So then, I I just leave it there. And then about 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, again, the door opens, ka-chink, ka-chink, and the guy comes and he takes me into the court. And then they say, it's amazing how crowded, it's like a zoo or something, or I don't know, there's so many people in there. People lining up to meet the judge. And, the judge hears the case, and then he pronounces his verdict. And then, so one by one, they were going through. So finally, I had to wait a few times, and then finally, my turn comes. Is you such and such? Yes. Did you do this? Yes. How do you plead? Guilty. Okay, bang, fine. 25 pounds. So that was it. I just went out, paid my 25 pounds, and back to the temple. So this is the kind of thing that was going on. In London, in central London, we do Harinam every Saturday night. And around the temple, there are so many one-way streets. The traffic is going one way. There's only enough room for one vehicle. You can't pass. There's only, they go down this way, they come up this way, they go down this way. So we would be doing Harinam in these really tight streets. And we got arrested. We'd be down at the end of a street, a big police wagon would come along. They'd arrest us all for obstruction. They'd put us in the back of the wagon. They'd drive us off to the police station. And so we'd be in the back of the van, and then we'd be quiet, and then we'd start, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, and then Madongas, and they'd be, shut up! And then we'd have to be quiet, and then finally we'd get to the police station, and they'd put us in cells, and then they'd put most of us maybe in 2 or 3 cells, and then the same thing would be, Hare Krishna, be quiet! So they shut us up, and they'd bring us out one by one, take our names and addresses, and then they'd send us away. So this was going on 2 or 3 weekends in a row. We got arrested by the police. We thought, we have to do something. We can't just get arrested every time. It's ridiculous. So we formed a plan whereby we'd have like people in plain clothes watching at each end of the street. And as soon as they saw a police wagon come, they'd send someone run to us and say, the police are here. So what we would do is we would just dissolve. The whole Harinam would dissolve. We would just disappear. We'd run in different directions, down different alleys, through shops, and congregate in another street about 10 minutes away or 5 minutes away. And then we'd all congregate in this next place, and then we'd start working at the bottom of the one-way street. So the traffic would come in from the top. So the police would take them ages before they could go in the slow-moving traffic till they reached us. And when they were almost about to reach us, then we would dissolve again. The whole Harinam would just dissolve. Suddenly it was there, and suddenly it was gone, and everyone was just like in different directions. And then we would again assemble in another place and do the Harinam. So there are so many stories of devotees and how just inspired by Srila Prabhupada. I remember one time going on Harinam, and we were returning from the Harinam, going back to the manor, and everyone's sitting, in those days we didn't have vans with seats or anything. Everyone was just sitting in the floor in the back of the van, just sliding around as it was going along. And then one devotee said, did you hear what Prabhupada said about the war? I said, no, what did he say? And all the devotees it was like amazing. Everyone was just like hanging on what Srila Prabhupada would say about whatever it was he wanted to say. And this was about the war and, how it would start with Pakistan and so many different things like that. But everyone was just sold on whatever Prabhupada wanted to be done, whatever way he wanted it done. That's just what you did. So it was very much like, as is described with Tukaram. Prabhupada was engaging us in pure devotional service. We weren't pure devotees, but we were in the sense that because our actions were all based on what he wanted us to do. So we were acting purely. We were pure devotees in that sense. So this was the way the movement was founded. It was started based on this just enthusiasm and faith in Srila Prabhupada's vision. And somehow or another, over the years, we kind of seem to have lost a lot of that. Maybe here in India, there's more of it because we see many brahmacharis and, temples are thriving and so many things are going on. There's so many activities going on. But in the West, oftentimes, we don't see so much of that anymore. There's hardly any new devotees being made. I don't know how it is now, but I was in America in 1990. We were trying to set up Padayatra America. And we did Padayatra America from San Francisco down to Tijuana in Mexico. And then I was asked to move the Padayatra equipment from Los Angeles to Washington, D.C. So I had to drive across the states, 9 days I think it took us, with Radha Raman Maharaj, when he was a brahmachari. We were just driving across America. We'd stop in a motel. He'd go and preach it was all Patel motels. All the motels in America are owned by Patels, practically speaking. So all across America, 9 days, every motel we'd stop at was owned by a Patel. So he would go and preach to them, and they'd get a free room for the night. So finally we arrived in Potomac, we had a big kind of temple ashram farm in Washington, D.C. And when we arrived, the last devotee was just leaving. And there was just one devotee left who lived across the road. He wasn't living on the property. He was the pujari. And there was massive Radha Krishna deities, Gornitai. It was a huge temple. And it was like as if, sometimes you see these apocalypse movies where you go into a place where there's still some sandwich left on the table, half eaten, and a drink, kind of half drunk. So I walked into the Brahmachari ashram, and the curtains are blowing in the window, and there's like copings hanging there, and it's like no one there. It was just like, I couldn't believe it. It was just this huge property, really opulent ISKCON property, and the devotees had all gone. I was shocked. So this was back in the 90s, I don't know what it's like now, but somehow or another what happened? What happened to this idealism, this enthusiasm of Krishna consciousness? We can start it again tomorrow, right? It's just the same thing, just relying on Krishna. What did Prabhupada say? Prabhupada said, Krishna is no poor man, right? If you just do devotional service, Krishna will provide everything. Somehow or another, magically, Krishna will provide everything. But then we got into, first of all, it was book distribution, and then there was paraphernalia, and then so many different things. We started selling paintings, and then carpets. Devotees started selling carpets. And it became a business. I remember Jayatirtha, he got a contract to make Star Sabers. The Star Wars movie came out, and they had these things called Star Sabers. So Jayatirtha got a contract to buy plastic parts to make into Star Sabers, and he thought he was getting an exclusive deal. And so the prasadam room at the manor is about as big as this room. It was full of boxes of Star Saber bits. And then he got cheated, and someone else who was really together got the contract as well. And so they were selling Star Sabers, they were getting all the contracts to sell Star Sabers. We couldn't get them. So we were having like 15-hour marathons, brahmacharis making Star Sabers in the prasadam room at Bhaktivedanta Manor. So somehow or another, things went a little bit astray. So, but here in India, things are thriving very nicely. And we need to get back into this attitude of trying to understand what Krishna wants and just doing the needful, doing whatever savor is necessary to bring people to Krishna consciousness and to create Krishna conscious community. Here in Mayapur, from what I understand, the purpose of the Temple of the Vedic Planetarium was to attract the intelligentsia, the scientists, to bring them, to show them the alternative. What is the Vedic perspective on cosmology? And along with that, Prabhupada wanted us to be self-sufficient for 500 people, 500 men. And he was at the time, just before Prabhupada left, he was pushing the farm communities, gurukulas. And so we can understand that Mayapur was meant to be one of these communities. And the TOVP was to bring the intellectuals to come and to attract them to see the intellectual prowess of the Vedas. And then they would see devotees living ideal lives in Krishna consciousness, ideal family lives, happily engaged in producing their own food and serving Krishna, just as people did for thousands of years in traditional Vaishnav Vedic villages. And so that was Prabhupada's intention. So somehow or another we need to, parallel with what everything else we're doing, we need to include that, showing ideal lives in Krishna consciousness. And based on the necessity, we need to eat, we need a house, we need some clothes. So why get a job and work for someone else and make some industrialist rich when we can just spend all our labor trying to develop or grow or produce what we own, we need ourselves, and save time. Prabhupada said this will save time for Krishna consciousness. The whole idea is to save time for Krishna consciousness. Just do the bare minimum you need to keep your body and soul together, to keep your family together, to be healthy, happy, well-educated, and at the same time, save time for Krishna consciousness. So I'll stop there. Anyone have any comments or questions? Yes.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Thank you for a wonderful class and for sharing all your memories. You were talking about this finite, infinite souls that we have. Once we go back to the spiritual planet, we don't come back. These souls don't come back. So how do I understand? And if they're going, then these finite souls are decreasing, right? The material universe should mathematically decrease. How do I understand that? Is that the finite, infinite souls, and that's why we don't see the...
That's right. Because the material creation, or the entire creation, is eternal. It goes on forever. There's unlimited souls, actually. Right? Prabhupada sometimes describes that the spiritual world is 3/4 of the creation, and the material world is 1/4 of the creation. And it's like a kind of a way for us to try to understand. But what's 1/4 of unlimited? Right? It's also unlimited. So there's unlimited souls. The creation is unlimited. I remember when I was a child, when my mother was explaining to me how space went on forever, and I was saying, God, come on, it must end somewhere. And she said, okay, suppose you go in a spacecraft and you fly for thousands and thousands of miles, and finally you come across a wall and it says the end. What's on the other side of the wall? And I was like, it suddenly dawned on me, it's inconceivable. It's completely inconceivable. The creation goes on forever, right? It goes on forever. And there's unlimited souls. So we're never going to run out of people to occupy the material world. But if we did, fantastic. What do we need the material world for? Let's, the last person in the material world, turn the lights off and let's go. Right? So that's not a problem. Yes.
Bro, the last sentence of the purport, can you explain that? I didn't understand. So the answer depends on the specific significance of the body of the Lord as distinguished from the body of the common living being. So the answer is of this, like, what is the difference between the body of the Lord and body of common living entities? Is that the answer?
Well, Prabhupada makes the point that if the Lord has a big thing to do, then he creates a big body. And in the same way, if we are to be, if we are to be born as an elephant, then we get given an elephant's body or an ant's body. So in terms of what is the difference, it's a... Let me see, I'm going to have to look at it. The specific significance, the significance of the body of the Lord. So what does the Lord want to do? That what's the word? That dictates which body he will have. And so the question is, what's the specific difference between the body of the Lord and those of common living entities? So he's pointing out according to necessity. In this particular case, it's just according to necessity. The soul gets a body according to its necessity, and the Lord takes a body according to his necessity. Of course, the Lord is in complete control of what he has, and we are not in control. So there's that difference.
So the specific significance means necessity?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.